Hey, it's Tyler of crazyaboutcompost.com, and today's topic: what composting system is right for me? It really comes down to four different types. You could dig a hole, you could have a compost bin, a compost tumbler, or a worm setup. So going over the four from, I'd say, cheapest to most expensive. Obviously first we have digging a hole. Dig a hole, put your stuff in it, put the dirt back, and that's it. The benefits here is it's obviously easy, it's cheap, and there's really no maintenance. But the cons, there's really no compost. It'll take a couple years, but whatever. And that's because it's really a more anaerobic process, so to speak, because you're burying the stuff underground. But name of the game, you're keeping the material out of the landfill. I did this for a couple years and thought it worked totally fine. You might bother your neighbors a little bit with this, but I've found that you could do that with really any composting system depending on what it is and how nosy your neighbors are. So next up, the composting bin. This is great because it's also pretty cheap. You can build these yourself for essentially free with just a couple pallets or some drywall mesh and some stakes or a number of different ways. But yes, this is pretty cheap. If you bought a proper one, it might cost like 30 bucks or a little more, so that's not bad. And what's good about these is the amount of material you can get with these. You can really essentially add as much as you want, and that's good because if you live on a bigger property where you have a lot of lawn maintenance and such, you're going to have much larger quantities of waste. So this is definitely good for that. The cons would be turning the compost pile, because you're going to need to turn it, I'd say maybe once a week or so. And depending on your level of physical fitness, you're going to have to do a lot of turning the material, maybe using like a pitchfork or a rod or a shovel or something. But if you're okay with that, then this is definitely a great option. And like I said, it can handle a ton of material. And I guess another con might be that some people might find this unsightly, but whatever. It's your project. Do what you want. So I think they're fine. Moving on, the worms. Worms are a little more expensive. They'll probably run about $100 for the system and maybe 30 bucks a pound for the worms. Those prices vary a little bit. But what's great about this is that it's a year-round system. So in the middle of winter, where it might get super cold where you're at, most composting processes outdoors will pretty much stop. But with the worms, you can keep them inside your house, preferably in the basement, I would say. That's what I do. And year-round, they're gobbling away at your waste. So this is definitely good. The output, or the castings, are also really good, and they work great as a soil amendment. So that's definitely a cool thing. And also, it's just cool to say you own worms and they eat your garbage. And if you have kids and you're looking for an educational tool, or maybe you're a teacher and you want to have something for your students, teaching them something about worms is definitely a good thing, because again, you're keeping waste out of the landfill, you get a great casting as a result, and you have a lot of worms. So this is cool. The main challenges with the worms, though, I would say is mainly that you have to pay attention to them. It's not too easy to kill them, but at the same time, if you're not paying attention to them, or maybe the thing gets too moist, or you put in a lot of one material, you may just have to pay attention a little bit to make sure that your worms are happy. So, but if you like that kind of thing, I mean, yeah, it's great. So I definitely have worms. I'm a big fan, but yeah, I would say just the fact that they need some attention is the only real con here. It's not like set it and forget it like the other stuff is, for the most part. I guess also in order, the worm bin is the cheapest way to do it, but I'd say the results are the hardest to obtain, and it's really easy to have a very soggy mess because it's a plastic bin. But the other types of stuff, like the worm factory, the can of worms, or like the worm in, those are all definitely really nice systems that have all yielded really good results. So lastly is the compost tumbler. Obviously the main thing here is cost. I think it's really lame how expensive they are, because they'll cost you maybe 175 bucks or a little more. Again, if you're really creative, you could totally build your own. There's lots of plans out there on build your own tumbler. If you think you can do it, I highly recommend going this route. It would be really fulfilling, and you'll have an awesome contraption that you built. So what's good about these? They're definitely secure from the pests, the animals, the rodents, all that stuff. They're really neat, so you can have it in your backyard and it doesn't really look unsightly. It's just a nice looking barrel. You don't have to really worry about turning the compost. So as long as you pick one that is ergonomically friendly, then you're in good shape. So it's not like a compost bin where you have to actually be doing some work and kind of breaking your back a little bit to keep the stuff rotated. But if you get a nice one, you can easily have one that you can rotate with very little energy. So that's always good. And on these, I'd say that the limit on capacity is their main con. So I advise you to look for that. You'd want to definitely get one that's a minimum of 50 gallons of capacity. So, because again, you need material to have heat. The other thing is there's a lot of crappy compost tumbler models out there. So if you find one you like or you're not sure about, feel free to get in touch with me and I could tell you my thoughts on it firsthand. A lot of compost tumblers actually seem to have flaws in their design where they almost forget about airflow and think you need to have this tight barrel to get heat. But then the problem is you're not getting oxygen. So always keep that in mind. And for more detail about that, check out this link to check out my video specifically on all the different pros and cons of tumblers and how you can choose the best one for you. And I guess that's about it, really. I mean, those are the 4 types. You have your hole, your compost bin, your compost tumbler, worms, and yeah, I want you to do this, so get started. If you have questions with this whatsoever, feel free to get in touch. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and feel free to go to crazyaboutcompost.com and sign up for my free 7-day composting course where I'll teach you all the considerations for composting and how to make really great stuff. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and keep it dirty. Later.